Hello there. Welcome to this video. Today I will talk about, or I will continue talking about uh, my value tree, and also because it's connected up to what I feel is the root cause for our predicament. Like I feel like the West is heading down an authoritarian route. To be honest. Not to scare you, but I feel like we are going down an authoritarian route. And for me, this and to counter this, I think it's really important that we go into and revitalize our religious structures. So this is what gives me like true motivation for being interested in Christianity and the Bible, because I don't want our world to become authoritarian. And yeah. So yeah. So here you can see what I think is the root cause for all of these troubles, and this kind of I think everybody, Christians and non-Christians, and I think everybody struggles with this, because I think people struggle also, like we get authoritarian structures, and an authoritarian structure is where you force another person to do what you want. So whenever you use force on when you force this person to do something you want, you're being authoritarian. And we see now with everything that people are using more and more force against each other. Like, and you see it everywhere when you start to notice it. Like everywhere, people or other people want to interrupt your process. So this is your day, and in your day you have different things you do. You have a process, things you do, but there are so many people that would like to go in and interrupt your process. Want to go in and interrupt your process. And like just silly little example, I have a piano, like an electronic piano, you see, and when I have a like when I turn it on, it automatically turns itself off. Okay, and because we want to save the planet. But isn't it my decision? Shouldn't I be responsible to turn off my own piano? Like my piano constantly is turned off. I turn it on, and I go around to do something because I would like to do something else. When I come back to my piano, it's off, and I can't adjust the timer for when it turns itself off. It just turns itself off, and it's really annoying. And the same with my TV. Like I adjust my TV to not turn itself off, but then I have a smart TV, and it like gets auto updates, and whenever it gets a new update, it goes back to its old settings and it turns itself off. And that's also a bit annoying. So everything in my life turns itself off, except my old computer. Like that's always on, because I'm so annoyed with all the other stuff that turns itself off. So my old computer is always on. And it's so lovely. It's an enjoyment. And this is but it's a yeah, so people become authoritarian, like they want to interrupt your process. They don't respect your will because they think that they can do better than you. And we see this all around the society, and I think that the main reason is that people does not want any uncertainty. So that's the pattern, like the root pattern, is that people does not want uncertainty, so they want to use force on other people to force people to do their will because they don't want uncertainty. But in the end, it's like trusting in God, because what you do when you actually trust in God and live by God's commandments, you trust in Him. And people nowadays are unable to do that because you don't have faith. People lack faith. But people lack respect for other people's free will. And you do this, it's quite dangerous when you start to disrespecting other people's free will, because you begin starting an authoritarian structure. And this creates resentment. So like with my piano, it creates a little bit of resentment in me that makes me have my other computer on always and never turned off. Just, yeah, it's a sign of defying. I'm defying. And you see this in like the COVID lockdowns and vaccines. But you also see this in I don't know. It's just, but so in order to, yeah, it's just the tree of life. I have talked about this before, but life. And we have the tree of life here. And the tree of life represents your inner structure, because this can represent your morality tree, because inside you, inside your brain, inside here, I would say there's what's called an FI, an FI function, and this is part of Jungian depth psychology, and like this isn't like purely scientific yet, but people are working on like proving this function. But I think this function here is what creates your motivation for doing things. Like your true motivation. So I have some friends and they are vegans, and I don't understand why they are vegan. And these some of my friends, I don't know if they're good friends because they don't initiate contact with me, or they don't necessarily, they're not active, they don't necessarily speak to me that much. But when I talk to them about veganism, they get very motivated to talk to me. But when I talk to them about other things, they're not motivated to talk to me. And why are they really motivated to talk to me when I talk about the FI function, or when they talk about veganism with me? It's because I have initiated their true motivation, their FI function, and this is like I have activated their religious structure. So because inside you there's what you actually believe in, and what you actually believe in is what activates you, and what activates you is what gives you life, because you do stuff in the world, but you are activated. So this is what I see in Christians as well. Like they have a belief structure that activates them in the world. But so this this structure here, like it regulates your actions. Right. It regulates action, the structure, but action is also violence. Or action can become violence. So this structure here is really important because it regulates violence. And it's really important that this structure is like built correctly. And I think that is why we have the religious stories. Religious stories, they program. Religious stories, they program this tree, and I would call it the tree of life inside you, because if this tree in your moral tree, if this moral tree is programmed in the right way, then it becomes a source of life, and then it becomes a tree of life. But if this tree here is programmed in the wrong way, it becomes a tree of doom, like a tree of destruction, because this tree regulates violence. And this is why people are always like, I don't like religious people, because religious people are always so violent. Because like when you, yeah. But what they don't, and the people that say this, religious people are violent and is always fighting and la la la, they don't understand that they themselves are also religious, because everyone is religious, because everyone has this FI function. It's like a piece of your brain, I would say. It's a circuit inside your brain that this structure here is inside. It's a mechanical device inside your head. And this mechanical device inside your head is programmed by the religious stories. And these religious stories, they regulate your action, what actually make you motivated. And the proof for this is, why are people vegans? Nobody cares if you are vegan, because nobody cares about religion anymore in the West. Like, you can be gay, straight, whatever. Like, people doesn't care. But do they care? Yeah. Like, in my society, people really care about returning these bottles. That's like part of our religious structure. So if you return your bottles, then you're like, or then you're a good person. We have like big machines in each shopping mall that we stuff the bottles in, and we all return the bottles to. But why do people do this? Because it's part of our religious structure. But why are some people vegans? It's really like difficult to be a vegan. And when I challenge my friends that are vegan, they get really animated, and they really care about it. And I don't understand why they care so much about being vegan, because it's just silly in a way. From my perspective, I don't understand. But for them, it's really important, because it's part of their religious structure. Like inside the brain here, they have been programmed by the religious stories. They have been told that it's good to be a vegan. So that's why they get really animated when you talk about. But I would say, but some things are destructive for you, and other things gives you life. So this is why it's really important to have an interest into the religious stories. What are the best religious stories? What are those stories that will give you life? And it's here you come into the realm of the different religions. Because a story contains much wisdom. Because like the world is a difficult place to live in. Like the tons of, it's easy to make a mistake and get wiped out. There's like drug addicts everywhere around us. Okay, when you go look for them, and there's so many sick people around you when you start to look. And it's because life is difficult. It's easy to make a mistake and get wiped out. So you need something that regulates your actions in a healthy way. And this is why we have religious stories. And sub-religious stories are like fantasies, or like fantasy stories and folk tales and stuff like that. Because folk tales have a moral in them, and they try to like teach you like deeper stuff. So like Grete and Hans, and in the gingerbread castle or the gingerbread house, because there's a witch in there. The witch lives in the gingerbread house, and it wants to like entice Grete and Hans with candy. And this is kind of story for, because there are people like the witch that wants to entice young people, because a witch, like symbolically, I learned this by Jonathan Pachot, and a witch is a person that wants to keep another person for having a good relationship, because they're envious. So a witch is a person that's envious, and it wants to try to keep other people from having a good relationship, to get a girlfriend or boyfriend and children. So they want to stop people from having children because they're envious of them. And they do this by enticing them away by different means. Maybe it's a jealous parents that's controlling their children to always live at home with them. Like they're guilting the children to live at home with them, so they can't find a girlfriend or boyfriend, because so they're like guilted into living with them in the house. And this has happened. So then, yeah, so these stories tries to teach you stuff. Yeah. And the main thing that it wants to teach you is, or like a good religion story, is to trust in God, because there's uncertainty in the world. And if you don't trust in God, then you use force and you become authoritarian, because you want to interrupt people's processes, and that creates resentment and violence in society. And I see that we are heading that way now. So this is why it's important for people to get taught about the tree of life, that if you have a good religious structure in you, then this will create life for you. And if you have a bad religious story, that will create a doom for you. Like you will have broken marriage with unhappy kids, and your life is just misery. Or maybe you become a drug addict, or yeah. And for me, I think that the most, and also people, like if a story is true, if there's truth in a story, then people will remember it. And because things that are not true are like easy to forget, because I think people have a instinct for remembering things that are true. Because if you didn't, because the people that have survived up till now have been people that have that are into truth. Because if you weren't into truth, then you died. Because only those people that can be truthful on the planet, like for example, Norway is really cold in the winter, and if you didn't store up loads of food in your food barn, then you died. Because like Norwegian winters are deadly. So if you didn't live in truth, then you died. And the religious stories, even if you don't understand all the complex things in life, they teach you that you should do stuff, and you do stuff out of faith. You don't necessarily understand why you should do it, but you trust the religious story. And yeah, so, and you see this and I think you see this in the people around you, like on the country level, like those people that has had the best stories lives. And if you go away from the true stories, like you see, like with Israel and like in the Old Testament, like you have when Israel does what God tells them to do and they live with God, then they are prosperous. But when they move away from God, they fall. And it's because God can or like God is like infinite amount of things, but one of them is that God is reality, and if you're not truthful with reality, then you die. And I think this is what's happened in our society. We are starting to get less and less truthful with reality, and a sign or symptom of this is that we are not allowed to say what we want anymore, like we are censored, because people are afraid, because you undermine their sense of security, because they have placed their faith in an untrue system. And when you poke hole in their system, then they get angry and want to censor you, because people does not want to live in uncertainty. They struggle trusting in God, and then they become authoritarian, and they want to interrupt your daily life. So to reverse this, we need to teach people good religious stories. And I have faith in the Christian story. And this is what we in the West have been doing for 2,000 years. But like the last 30 years, people have forgotten. They don't understand what it means, because, yeah. So we need to revitalize those stories. So I want to understand the Christian story, because I think that's the source. I think my moral tree, my chip in my brain, like it's actually, I think it's actually in here. I think the FI circuit is here, like literally. And I think that when this part here, it's programmed right, it makes my life, actually, it creates life in my life. So yeah. And I know this is a bit mechanical and makes people uneasy, but I think that we need to like get down to like the bedrock. And I think this is the bedrock. And other people like Jordan Peterson talked to another guy, and he also found like there's a connection between the emotions and action. And when you start to analyze people in this drunken depth psychology, and when you identify people's FI function, like the people with FI, you see that those are they're more forceful, or yeah, they're more animated, or yeah, and yeah. But when you recognize this pattern, you start to see that we have this structure inside of us, and then you see that it's really important to have this program right, or else, because this is why you shouldn't mix religions, because you can get war. And we see this now that this, because you have a forest of trees, but you see that this forest is like being divided now, because people are becoming unsynced. Like the religious stories are becoming unsynced, and we see that there's a realignment. So people are moving away from each other, and we see this like I think like the classical religious people are moving out to the countryside, and the new religious people are more in the city. And yeah, I'm. But the good thing is that we have internet and YouTube, and more people are putting up to these facts, I think this is a fact, and are getting more and more motivated to water or like to refresh these religious stories. And when you delve deep into these stories, then yeah, there's like mystery in here. That is quite yeah, I think I know, but when I've been in these Christian circles, like I hear and I have experienced like really strange things, but I feel like there isn't, I don't know if I want to talk about it, because like you have to experience it by yourself, and I think the path to experience these mystical things is like by like having an interest in Jesus Christ. I think this is the important part, and there's like been, yeah, if you want a sane tree, I think it's through, like the root here has been Jesus Christ. And but I think like for me the main thing here is not to do violence against any other person. It is to say that I have no right to kill another person or to harm another person. Like to be serious about that. And that means for me to, yeah, just think about that in relation to, for example, taxes. What does that mean? Because what is a tax? You are using force against another person by proxy, because you ask somebody else to. So is that right? And what does that mean? Are you forcing another person or contributing to a system which forces people? I think it's here we need to have a revolution, or we need to have new thoughts. And I think that Christianity and libertarianism has gone quite well together. Like not using force against each other. I think people need to become more and more aware of this, because we need to stop interrupting each other. We need to have like respect for each other's free will. And I think the path to life is not interrupting each other and respecting each other, because then we don't need to, when you're not dependent on a centralized system, then you don't need to use force and you don't need to censor people, because you can just choose something else. But when you have a centralized system, which we have today, then you have to use force against each other and you have to censor and so this, I think this is the most important, or I think it's really important to have an understanding of this. Yeah, so this is what creates the main, maybe it's not a good thing, but I think it's like on a literal sense, it's like saving, it's my salvation. Like for my, I don't want our world to become authoritarian, and I don't want to have like Soviet in the West. So for me, it's a salvation if me and other people would, yeah. So it's kind of, so when the Bible talks about you will be saved by Jesus and all of that stuff, I like, yeah, that's like my soul is saved because I think, like, okay, so I think there's a study, let's say like 50% of liberal women in the United States have psychological problems that a physician, like a medical person, has asked them or told them that they have mental issues. 50%, and that's quite a lot. Okay, and I think that if you don't have this, if this tree is not aligned with reality, with a good religious stories, then you struggle making sense of the world, and you constantly have bad consciousness. You feel bad, and you become angry. So loads of anger because this tree, when there's a breach on your lower branches, you become angry, and you can become violent. So I think this is why you see Antifa and all of those people, because there's like mess in the branches. They're like, yeah, there's just loads of chaos in here. And when there's lots of chaos in here, you become violent and angry, and you struggle with your psyche. And I see this with some of my friends, that they are like, yeah, they are struggling, and it's because there's conflicts in here, and there's like mess in here. And I think you get this straightened out by good religious stories. And I think that to put it on to like really like exemplify it or put it on a point, if all of those liberal women, the 50%, that if they actually were taught and understand the story of Christ, I think they will stop having mental issues. Because I think if they understood the true story of Christ, I think that their internal tree would be straightened out in a good way, which stops them having mental issues. Because they struggle because there's like, because this tree isn't aligned with reality. And I think, this is what makes people have mental issues. Of course, it's because you have a trauma and stuff like that. Like if you have been, like, have a traumatic childhood and you have been experiencing trauma and stuff like that, of course, this is. But I think that underneath that, if you have had a trauma, it's because your tree here has been like, the branches have been like violated, have been snapped and brutalized. Like the bark on your tree has been like, and there's like sap seeping out, and your tree has been brutalized. And I think when you have a brutalized tree, then you struggle in life. But I think that good religious stories mend the branches and mend the bark and mend the tree and make it grow leaves and grow healthy. Yeah. So so this tree is mended by good religious story. And this is why I think that people should participate in good religious communities. because I think that you can, and I think like when people have this, they get in Christian, you have this aha moment, and you like get saved, like, and I think that's why when like a core part of your tree here is like reversed, because you understand something, and everything is because I think that is when you understand things on a most fundamental level, then every other branch up here gets they are connected, so they get affected. So when you understand something fundamental, like your whole life changes, and you become and you so there are stories of people that were drug addicts and they almost died and and suddenly they understood something else, and all of this branch, instead of being a tree of doom, it became a true source. It became a tree of life, and their whole life changed, and they become happy with family and job and everything good. And I think it's because this tree of life is changed. And then it's like the mystical things, because what can have your life or your tree change in this fundamental way? So are there external spirits, like are there like the Holy Ghost? Is that like a real thing, and can that affect you? Like we don't know, or I don't know, but that's like the thing that you can experience, maybe. But like I think the mechanics of it is that there's the structure inside your head that's changed on the deep level here, and it gets and connects up. So your whole structure, instead of being like a dark and bleedy tree and like unhealthy tree with lots of fungus and death, if it suddenly gets like proper nutrients and then it blossoms and become a tree of life, a tree of light. Like instead of it being a tree of darkness and gloom, when you feed it like bad like satanic religious stories, when it's fed this, it becomes a dark tree, like deathly tree, where like there's death around it, like there's no grass, and like people avoid you on the street. People doesn't want anything to do with you. But when it comes to tree of life, you feed it with good things, like good religious stories, like you understand things in a good way, and then it becomes like there's like green flowers and bunnies, and people want to be around you and take refuge in you, like to take comfort in you, because you're like a lovely willow. and this is like the light that emanates out from you, because you have understood something that's positive and creates it gives you peace and contentment, and you're happy with having little. For example, like all the great religious people are like they are just happy, and they're like in peace, and they have a connection to God through wherever they are. And it's because like this tree is like has become a tree of life for them, and they can give peace and solace to the people around you or around them. So it's really important. I think this is like the core thought. Yeah. I've been talking for 45 minutes and 41 seconds now. So if you've been following me this far, I thank you. I thank you. And God bless. Okay, bye.